So Rodger Savory, let's go ahead and have you unmute and bring you to the front of the room. We are grateful that you are here with us. We're going to make you co-host. Rodger, where are you calling in from this morning?
Switzerland. I'm at the World Economic Forum event in Davos.
Very good. Well, we're grateful that you're able to be here with us. So Rodger Savory is our keynote speaker. Many of you know his father, Alan Savory. Um, and, Rodger has an amazing ability to be able to take complexity and explain it in a simple way without dumbing it down and watering it down, but getting it down to the point that, hey, I can digest this, this makes sense, and I can implement it. So Rodger, we'll let you jump right in. We look forward to having you lead this out.
Firstly, everybody, thanks for coming, and Jared, thanks for the invite. The kind of topic I chose was so true profit using holistic financial planning, why it's vital for civilization. Sounds ominous, but it's actually not ominous. It's a hopeful message, but I think we need to understand the importance. So I notice we've got a lot of Savory Institute people here, holistic management people here. So let me just start with our holistic context. Without it, I've been around playing this game since I was 17. Without a holistic context, I just watch projects, farms, businesses collapse. And even with a holistic context, I often watch people really struggle at times. But when they remember to go back and look at their holistic context, I watch them, that's why we're doing this, and I watch people get up and go forward, particularly in times of crisis, like fires, death in the family, etc., etc. For those who aren't familiar, everyone with veto power over decisions must be involved. Um, so, uh, it really is important that no matter how difficult it is, it's to get the answer no right at the beginning of a project than 2, 3 years into it. Because if you get it right at the beginning, you know how to go around it. So bring those difficult people for you to bring in right at the beginning when you're setting your holistic context. And then all a holistic context is, it's literally just a document that people create where you describe how you want your lives to be. And that is incredibly simple to say and incredibly difficult for most people to do. So there's a procedure that you can read about where you go through it and you describe socially how you want your lives to be. What's your quality of life that you desire? And most people have thought about it. They're just working too hard, just going through the motions. And once you've done that, well, then you've got to describe economically how you're going to achieve that desired quality of life. I want to go water skiing every Sunday for 6 hours, and okay, where's the money going to come from? You've got to plan it. Okay, so you've got to plan it, and then great grandchildren to be living the same quality of life. What will your land need to look like 300, 500 years from today? Now, I have been doing this a long time, and I work in some pretty harsh deserts. And even though there is evidence in those deserts that there used to be a forest, I've never ever had someone in a forest, someone in a desert describe their future landscape description being a forest again. It's too big a leap for the human brain to comprehend. So don't feel bad about that. Describe as far forward as you can imagine. And many ranchers have been really surprised 3 years later when they've read their holistic context, quality of life, landscape description. In only 3 years, they've achieved everything that they thought they would work on for their whole lives. At that point, reimagine. And we've got some ranchers that have been doing this for quite a long time now, and they did about 3 or 4 reimaginations, and they always achieved it. But I'm noticing that a lot of the holistic managers who came in the 1980s haven't continued to go through that process, and their properties have stagnated. And there's no need for it other than they are not going through the process and doing their planning, and the holistic context is a vital part of that planning. So try and dream as far out as you can, and then work towards achieving it. Now, this is the big thing. Whenever you create this document, because you've got everyone with veto power there, make sure you create it through consensus, not compromise. And I need to warn everyone here that men do not like to compromise and women do. And that's not good. You're going to have to practice working where everyone, comes to an agreement through consensus. And often you will have women who say they agree, but they're actually compromising. And it's important when you notice that, particularly as mediators in these situations, to work with people a bit more slowly and really kind of nurture it out of the people who are used to compromising, for them to, kind of finally get the language in the agreement that they can actually agree with fully. So keep working until language is acceptable to everyone. It's worth it. Now, brainstorming. Um, you know, all the different revenue streams is vital. And in the holistic management world, there are so many examples of, weird and wacky brainstormed ideas that became reality. And many of them actually became the more profitable part of the enterprise, the family business. So for those who don't know, a general rule of brainstorming is we create 100, we have everyone grab a piece of paper, and you say, okay, on this in this hole under management, what are 100 things we can do to make money? And you give everyone 3, 5, 10 minutes, whatever it is, and everyone scribbles down as fast as they can 100 ideas. Then everyone reads the ideas out, and the kind of group says, yeah, 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 that one might work, and yeah, that one might work. And you narrow everyone's list of 100, and you'll find a lot of them are repeated. A lot of people have the same ideas, but you try and narrow it down to about 20. And then you look more seriously at those 20. Now, sometimes you might assign homework to people to, okay, go and do a deeper look into the finances of that idea. Or 20 may still be too many. If you're in a smaller family farm, you might continue narrowing it down to 5 ideas. And then you give everyone 2 or 3 months to go and research these ideas to see if they're viable. And so the whole financial planning process, I find the quickest I've ever done it was 6 weeks. So don't think that it's a quick process. You've got to start by kind of giving your brain time to expand and to keep going. So and then when you think you've got the 5 ideas that can work, a lot of great ideas you find you can't do because you don't have the manpower, or there's just not enough hours in the day. Now, one of the things I find is very easy in Africa, but very difficult in America and Australia, is to convince people to hire more people. And I use a Canadian study to kind of help get the idea through to people. They had a man in Canada build a home, and they timed him. And then they had 2 men build the same home, and they timed them. And I asked people to guess, but this isn't the right forum for it. So I'll give you the answer. But 2 men build a home 7 times faster than 1 man. So, there's not many things that give you a 700% return on investment. So bringing someone onto your team you might think it's costing you money, but generally it's earning your money. And when we bring people onto our team, I have a methodology that I share with people, and that is in every society, community, religion group, you have 5% natural workers, you have 10% hard workers, about 15% average workers, and who cares about the rest? But amongst the rest, you have a certain percent who are what I call the comedians. They're the jokers. Now, unfortunately, the comedians generally pick on the boss. So when you hire a comedian, expect to be teased by the person, and sadly, you're not allowed to fire that person because they keep the whole ethic of the organization light and fun. You know, it's fun to see what he's going to do to the boss next. Now, the key for you as a business is you need to try and hire the 5% natural workers from your community because the natural workers are 30% more productive than everyone else. And a natural worker, you don't have to supervise him. They just want to work. Now, if you hire a hard worker, you have to watch them to get production out of them. So as a manager or an owner, is it easier to hire hard workers that you have to supervise or natural workers that you don't have to worry about? You just point them in the direction and they just get it done. So that what I've just told you there, that is a 30% increase in productivity or profitability for your business. So really consider it. Now, when we're planning our incomes in the holistic financial planning process, each you have to you have to put things in columns, and I always put things in columns. All the income I always put on the left, and all the expenses I put on the right. And I think that came from the original holistic management financial planning charts, and which are 35 odd years old, and I'm still using those. I have a computerized version that makes my life easy. But create a column for every different revenue stream. The one operation I worked with, we had 118 income columns. And let me tell you, that was a financial plan. But we kept track of 118 different revenue streams, on the left. Um, uh, so, so don't worry about it because for your income, you'll have your expenses on the other side. Now, another one of my bits of advice after playing the game for 35 years with livestock is remove yourself from the commodity market. It's like going to the casino and throwing your money away. As soon as you take your animals to a sale barn or anything like that, it's a chump's game. It is not, back in 1955, near as I can tell, it might have been 54, the Bretton Woods created an agreement where they decided to keep commodity food prices low. So rice, cattle, corn, all the commodity food prices are set, and you can look in the records, and I've done it. You can go through the records here since 55, day of the year where they bring the price back down. Now, whether it's a BSE scare or foot and mouth, or it doesn't matter what it is, but the government once a year brings the price back to the same point. So, for example, the price of wheat has stayed at $1.22 a bushel for 60 years. The price, cattle have stayed at $1 a kg for 70 years. Now, in 2006, there was a little bit of a bumper. Then there were world food mats, and by 2008, they brought the price down. So if you want to be profitable, you have no chance of being profitable if you stay in the commodity market. So what that means as a cattleman is you have to have your own label. You have to go paddock to plate. If you're growing, if you're growing corn, you have to sell your sweet corn cobs in the farmers market. You have to remove yourself from the commodity market. And if you don't, you're just wasting your time. Um, and then measure all incomes by the month when they're most likely to come in. So when you do not rely on the commodity market for your income, because it's just not happening. Okay, expenses. Expenses. These are expenses you can't escape. Normally land taxes. Anyone in America who thinks he owns his land, or Australia, or basically anywhere up in the world, yeah, you don't. And not pay your taxes on your land, see how long it is before you're hoofed off. Yeah, basically we're all tenants on the land, and you have to pay your taxes. After you've paid your taxes, the next column is always moral obligation. Now, if you gave your word, keep it. It's just as simple as that. And so many young people are trying to get into farming, and I tell them, make a deal with the old 70, 80-year-old. Tell him you will pay all his expenses until he dies. Remove that stress from him of, I'm 74 years old, I'm old and tired, I'm going to live for another 15, 20 years. Who's going to take care of me? Well, if you want to get into farming as a young person, because of all commodity food prices, remember land prices have gone up, but commodities have stayed the same. So the two parts of the chart, either um, commodity foods have to go up. I heard someone talking about the price of beef. Well, you did at the beginning, Jared, saying how, oh, we've never received so much. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. We're receiving pennies on the dollar. The last time I did it, if I took the price of beef in 1955 and I put the registered inflation rate every year from that date to the last time I did the exercise, it's over $14 a pound, live weight at the gate of your farm. Hands up, I can't see everyone, but hands up who's getting $14 a pound live weight. By now it's probably $16 because I did the math a couple of years ago. Anyone getting $16 a pound live weight? So $32 a pound rest? Anyone? No. So no, we're not getting high cattle prices. It's a myth. It's smoke and mirrors. We're Farmers and ranchers have subsidized cheap food to the cities for 70 years, and we were all hoodwinked into believing we were getting subsidies. No, the cities and the politicians are getting subsidies. Um, and then after you've agreed to keep your word, then put all your other expenses, salaries, fuels, livestock purchases, repairs, etc. Now, I've worked in Africa, I've worked in Australia, Canada, America, so I've worked around the world, and it is true, whatever people think is the cheapest in a country, whenever I look at people's fin plans, whatever they think is the cheapest is always the most expensive thing as a line item in the budget. So in Africa, oh, salaries are cheap. How come salaries are the highest thing on the line item? In America, fuel is cheap. How come fuel, is the most expensive thing as a line item? So it makes you realize that what we believe is what we end up putting into our financial plan. And you've got to fight that urge. Okay, bank balance and cash flow. When I said it can take 6 weeks to put a financial plan together, this is where most people really struggle and go backwards and forwards, because you can't have any day where you are in the red. And so you've got to juggle your breeding dates are, when you're planting crops, when you're harvesting, how you're storing. And among managers, there's some fantastic stories of people who, when they looked at the financial plan, realized it wouldn't work like this, but if they could hold out to that date, wow, they'd earn that much more. So then they came up with creative ways to kind of extend seasons or change things up to hold out to those dates and got much better prices. That's happened in the industry, that's happened in the onion industry, quite a few industries. Um, People have, through necessity and going through the financial planning process, have come up with creative solutions that have made them highly profitable. Sadly, though, as soon as everyone learns what you do and why you're profitable, they all jump on the bandwagon and the prices go down and you don't make as much profit. The good news, though, is because you're managing holistically and you're doing this planning process every year, you don't have a problem coming up with a new plan to stay ahead of everyone who's copying your old plan. So, for example, we've got a couple of Canadians here. Custom grazing cattle, we made a lot of in the early days, but it was only the first 54 people who were doing ultra high density grazing who sucked up all the animals out of the feedlots who made that money, and there was nothing left for anyone else because that was the total number of cattle in the feedlots through the winters. So everyone else was like, well, what do we do? I'm like, come up with your own plan. This one's already taken. And so you've got to kind of you've got to do this planning annually. And shuffle your income and expenses until it works. Now, the control sheets. This is probably the biggest thing that I know holistic managers are meant to do that they don't. And the reason is quite simple. Nobody likes being held accountable. It doesn't feel good. And if it doesn't feel good, you're not going to want to do it. You're going to find a reason to procrastinate. So this is where owners or bosses have to, have to make it a priority that on the last day of the month, they go through the control sheets, they see where you were over or under on what you planned as an income or an expense. They figure out, who needs to be held responsible to just within the next 30 days get you back on track. I'm lucky enough to have worked in hyperinflation in Zimbabwe, and boy, that is a good training ground. When you've got 350% inflation, those figures had better be done morning, noon, evening, to stay on track. And that's why I have so much confidence in the process because it worked. I know, it just worked. Um, okay, so um, assign who's responsible for correcting it and just get it done. Now, um, and this applies to government, mining companies, ranching families, foresters, fishery managers, or you at home. I've got teenage kids right now, and they're earning money, and the first time they earned money, it was gone. And then I said, "Now, did you learn a lesson?" Okay, all those meals you had with your buddies, and you were spending money. No, if you want to buy that car, you've got a budget, you've got a plan, you've got to, stay on track. So it applies to everyone. Keep your income and expenses in line. Now, I'm presuming, people like Byron and others will share this with you, but if anyone wants to just take a screenshot, if you haven't bought these two books and you don't have them, it's $70. Just get them. They're worth it. And a lot of people pay me a lot of money for consulting. And when I'm in their home, I will open these books and I will go step by step through the process with them. And I do that for two reasons. One, to make them realize that all the answers are there. These books were designed so, if you were in the middle of nowhere, you could figure it out on your own. Now, the benefit of a consultant is you get some experience, to help you in your particular thing, things that they may have seen around the world, but you don't have to have a consultant. You can, sit on long winter nights and think and plan and just follow these steps. The handbook has step-by-step instructions. So I would encourage everyone to do it. And a lot of people are religious, and they'll take the time to study the Bible. And I have frequently encouraged people to study the textbook once a week just like Bible study. If Sunday's Bible study, make Wednesday the Green Bible study, and literally just study what it means to think holistically, because it's a new concept for humans. And the more we think about it and analyze it, the more we'll start to grasp it. Okay, so this is a fairly innocent slide, but I'm going to stop flying through the slides now, and I'm going to kind of talk about the subject of my talk. So, um, biodiversity. Why does my slide say stop the kill? So, on August 11th, 1945, we had an event in the world. Many of you might remember it. It was the bombings in Japan. And those nuclear bombs changed the world forever. Now, the fascinating thing about atomic energy is there was a peaceful man by the name of Einstein, who came up with the theory of relativity that led to the creation of the atomic bomb. And yet, at the time, there was a warrior by the name of Field Marshal Jan Smuts, who came up with a theory of holism and evolution. So you had the warrior trying to figure out life and peace, and you had the peaceful man figuring out the most destructive weapon mankind has ever known. Now, in Smuts's Holism and Evolution, he speaks about that the world functions in wholes, patterns, and spirituality. And many people who study holistic management have lost track of the spirituality side of what Smuts was telling us about. And when you read his work, you realize, when because, Einstein, they were all kind of in the same universities together, they were all studying together. They were thinking about energy, protons and electrons. As Smuts said, well, what's the difference between energy with protons and electrons in an element when it's in a rock, and protons, electrons in an element in a living being? So the building blocks are the same, but one is just a rock. The other is a living creature. And he figured out that the difference was this that he called spirituality. And the more we're looking at it, the more we're studying it, we're realizing that part of the three-legged pot is just as important as patterns, studying the patterns, and the wholes. So when we're looking at holistic management, look at the whole under management, but also look for patterns, and also understand the spirituality of everything you're dealing with. So after August 11th, 1945, the world realized for the first time ever, I can tell, 250,000 years, humans had destroyed their ecosystem. And once it was destroyed, then, but they, okay, let me back up. Humans had harvested resources in mass. So whether it was migrating up a river, that they figured out how to trap masses of these fish. Well, now they trap masses of these fish, and they figured out, well, to stop them rotting, they had to soak them. So now they start chopping down forests to the fish. And so they catch more and more fish. Industry starts. Now your woodpeckers supplying the wood, and smokers smoking the thing. And now there's more rain. So now more people live, and there's less hardship. So you have kind of thing happening that begins the thing, and cities around the resource, whether it was harvesting mammoth, harvesting sturgeon, or harvesting flowers. These massive resources were caught, trapped, processed, and now a city goes. Well, at some point, the city's population has grown and grown and grown, and they start taking too much of the resource. And finally, the resource runs out because not enough of them are getting upriver to breed or completing their migration. And so now the resource that the city depended on collapses, and the environment around it collapses. All the trees were chopped down. Now there's no wood to keep them warm in winter. Whatever the scenario is, I mean, we're looking 250,000 years that we find evidence of this. So it's been happening for a long time. But now all these cities, they look over the mountain, they realize, oh, over there's a river that hasn't been tapped yet. So now we created an army and we go and kill all people, and we do it again. We take over their resources and we do it again. And humans have been doing it for 250,000 years. Destroy your ecosystem, go conquer the next people. Destroy your ecosystem, go and conquer the people. We know in the more recent last 12,000 years, we turned 2/3 of our planet into it with this process. And then when the slope weren't migrating or anything, and you had a city and there were no more, lava, then we came up with, well, let's grow food protein. So then we invented plow, roughly 10 to 12,000 years ago. Now we start killing our soil, but we don't understand the complex living organism. So when we plow it and turn it over and it kills it, we just make things worse. That's basically the beginning of the progression of desertification globally. So great, we have destroyed 2/3 of the planet that was a viable home for humans. All humans now are now living on 1/3 of the planet that's left. But of the 1/3, we're destroying 70% of the 1/3 that's left. And then a guy comes along and he makes a bomb that's so bad that you can no longer go and conquer someone else. Because no army in the world can fight against a nuclear explosion. I was a soldier for many years. I know this. You just can't do it. It's just not a viable option. So for the first time in 250,000 years of human history, all of our genetic knowledge of how to go and conquer someone else and how to destroy ecosystems is no longer a vital option. Oh wow, what do we do? There is only one option left to mankind. We have to regenerate the 2/3 of the planet we have previously destroyed. So we can start with the easy work, which is the 70% that's currently being destroyed. So that's all of you on desertifying ranches in Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, California. Those are the easy bits, but the pure deserts, that's the next step. So this is really important because we have to fix the land within our current boundaries. The option of going and taking someone else's land is no longer an option. We just had Trump elected president, and he's just said all the people who've invaded us, get out. Why did he say that? Because their land is functionally destroyed. They can no longer earn a living on their land. So they're leaving their desertified land, hoping to come to us. And we're worried about ours. So, this is what's happening here, whether it's the Syrians after the drought in Syria migrated into Europe, it's the same thing. It's ecosystem collapse. Okay, well, we want to migrate. No, we're now going to use an army to stop you migrating. You have to fix your area. Well, we have to fix ours, and this applies to everyone globally. So, so that's why this is really important, and why you have to get as many of your friends, family, governments, whatever. You have to get them understanding why this is so important. It's important for our collective survival. We have to spread these ideas and this knowledge. Now, the second part of that is in trying to figure out why these ideas are not being absorbed, is I realized that all humans suffer from what I call instinctual fear. Now, I don't know if that's the right word, but that's how it manifests itself. So what we do is we let 5% of a population go and try a new mushroom, try a new food, or move to a new area. And then we watch them, and if they survive for 3 complete generations, then the rest of us follow. So whether it was the first pioneers who came over on the Mayflower and then waited 90 years before the masses started arriving, whether it's the first Mennonites moving to the Amazon jungle, and then 90 years later, a whole bunch of them arrive. It doesn't matter. This is how humans do it. Well, we don't have 90 years to wait. We're about 30 years, 1 generation into this journey of holistic management and this thinking. We've got 2 more generations before the herd will join us. So don't get depressed, but do everything you can to try and speed up that process. And because trust me, it's kind of important. Okay, so that's enough of the doom and gloom, but I wanted people to understand my thinking behind the reasoning behind it and why this is so important. And we've got to be profitable for this to spread. I've been at a whole bunch of conferences here in Davos, and everyone's talking about regenerative agriculture, and everyone's saying, yeah, but we can't figure out how to make money. Well, we can make money, and we can make a lot of money by changing to solar dollars. But anyway, so please remember, life begets life, more life begets more life. You've got to make life, biodiversity, stop the kill. Humans for 250,000 years used linear thinking, and to make things simpler, we killed everything. And we have got to stop killing everything. We use a fungicide to kill fungi. Life depends on fungi. We use an insecticide to kill insects. Without bees, we don't have crops. We use a herbicide to kill herbs. Without plants photosynthesizing and feeding the billions and trillions of microorganisms below ground level, you have no healthy soil. So everything we currently do is based on the model of kill, 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 and we can no longer do that. We have to resist the urge. And I'm a hunter. I've been very good at killing in my life. But you get to a point where you realize, oh God, we've got to change this. We've got to encourage life. Soil life is the easiest to encourage, but we've got to encourage all of it. And so when we're working on increasing biodiversity, we also have to increase biomass. So remember that the greatest increase in biodiversity that you can get is in soils. Greatest you can get in biomass is from healthy soils. Now, a lot of people don't understand that soil is a living organism, and it's a complex living organism. And the enemy of soil light is violet light. Ultraviolet light sterilizes the microorganisms in soil. When we plow, violet light that kills it. When we burn land, it's the ultraviolet microorganisms. And we've got to start making decisions to keep soil 100% covered all the time. Because that life really hates ultraviolet light. So think UV like the enemy, and just like if you went and lay out in your field bare naked the whole summer, you would be a critter and you'd get blisters and everything. The same applies to your soil. We need to protect it, and the natural protector of soil is lignin and grass. As we increase the photosynthetic process and get more energy under the ground, it in turn feeds the soil life. So just remember, the difference between a fertile soil and an infertile soil is the quantity of life. So a nation is on fertile soil. So make every decision possible, increase the energy being pumped below ground to feed more microorganisms. The soil microorganisms there are, the more life that is in the soil, the more fertile it is. Coast in America, in South Africa, in Australia, where in Norway, make decision to have green growing things year round. And in brittle environments where you haven't had rain for 9 months, there are plants that will grow year round. Start looking for them, start encouraging their life cycles. You'll be amazed what happens when you do. Okay, so, and then when doing this, the next thing we have to do is we have to start trading in solar dollars. We are thinking in solar dollars, trading in solar dollars, talking in solar dollars. And a solar dollar does not come from a solar panel. That is a mineral dollar. A solar dollar comes from sunlight energy into a plant through photosynthesis, growing something, turning it into soil, turning it into plants, turning it into livestock, turning it into trees. All of that is solar dollars, and that is the only sustainable source of wealth on the planet. And to be quite honest, it's also what's going to save us, because remember, the whole bigger than a human is green growing plants because they produce oxygen. So we need to get these green growing plants going all over the thing, and that is what our economy needs to be based on, and how we need to start thinking and think, because this will take you in the direction of true profit. Okay, so what is true profit? This is a profitable ranching event, and everyone's talking about profit. Well, let's discuss what is profit. This is my definition of profit. I believe profit is creating healthy soils, growing healthy crops and livestock on healthy soils, improvement in the livelihoods of rural people and communities, spending less than you earn in soils, water, plants, animals, and cash. If you can do all of those, I believe you're making a true profit. I think anything less than that, you're just kidding yourself. And if your banker doesn't agree with you, fire your banker. And just explain to your banker just before you fire him that you're making the decision to fire him because you care about his great great grandchildren. Okay, so you really need to think about this profit that you're chasing. And with the livelihoods of rural people, just remember that for the first time in human history, more humans live in cities than rurally. And someone's drawing all over my picture. Um, uh, um, more people live in cities than rurally, which basically means that rural people no longer have a voice in urban-based democracies. So don't think you're going to get any help from politicians or anyone else city-based, because basically democracy is not working anymore. Okay, so let's now talk about some principles. Is everyone seeing this right across the screen? Or is it just me?
Yep, we can. I'll try to erase those highlights on there, Roger.
Okay, so let's talk principles. I mean, one seed becomes hundreds of seeds. Now, this is important for crop farmers, but it's doubly important for anyone who's running a pasture. Many of my clients that I work with, I kind of insist that they grow their new pasture of all their different varieties, and then I tell them to let it go to seed. And all the neighbors come over and say, no, 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 that you need to cut hay now. Leave it. No, 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 you need to graze it now. Leave it. No, no, whatever, just leave it. Let it go to seed, because for that one seed that you bought, When you let that plant go to seed, you've got 500 to 1,000 to 2,000 new seeds laying in the ground waiting for future years to germinate if you ever get bare soil again. And so, you know, a lot of people have completely lost the biodiversity in their pastures on their ranches. And so we're figuring out that you can slowly get your land to come back to thing, but more and more people are deciding, yeah, we know we can do this in 3 to 5 years, but I'd rather do it in 1 year. And so if you can put the money aside to do it in 1 year and get all your seeds out there, grow your summer forage, let it all go to seed, graze it in the winter, grow your winter forage, let it all go to seed, graze it in late summer. And But the same applies to anyone doing crops for the actual crops. A investment in a seed turns into a whole cob, turns into a whole sheath of wheat. It's a small investment turns into something big. So, as a principle, that is your quickest return. And you can have this exponential growth in as little as 120 days. I think farmers who've been desperate for money, I think we've got them growing lettuce, and I think within 14 days they were getting an income. Within 10 days, 10 to 14 days, they were getting an income from harvesting baby lettuce, and they planted a lot, so then as it kept growing, they could keep going. But that was people who were desperate. Bunnies breed very fast and exponentially. I've got some lovely stories of people. It's interesting that it's mostly kids doing the rabbits, but there's no reason an adult family farm can't make a lot of money quickly on rabbits. Everyone's seen Joel Salatin's chicken tractors. Rabbit tractors work just as well. Just make sure you've got pig wire on the bottom, otherwise the rabbits are gone in the morning. Um, uh, Chickens grow from eggs to meat birds in 3 to 4 months. More and more people are doing pastured birds, and I'm happy to see it. I would like to see more biodiversity in the pastures that chickens are being asked to graze. And I'd like to see more flowering plants, more insects, etc., stuff like that. Pigs are fantastic. Um, I think I'm correct in saying California just outlawed pigs in farrowing barns and everything. So I think I'm correct in saying that if you want to do pastured pigs in California, it's going to be a big thing. I know my son right now, sorry, this is a business plug. My son is patenting portable pig farrowing, what does he call them? Pig whams for sows to farrow in pastures that can be moved by one person from pasture to pasture, and a whole bunch of other things because we've been figuring out how to do pigs more efficiently. Um, Many of the people I work with are taking $100 pig and selling it for $1,200 at retail. That's a lot of money quickly. I always encourage any new farm or any bankrupt farm to look at chickens, pigs, sheep, and goats at first and to not even consider cattle. There is just no money in cattle. They are too slow. So as you can see there, I've got neats are slow, steady on the block, but you have to wait on average 3 years for your money. 9 months of pregnancy, 2 years of growth. So it's a 3 year investment. So my advice is to do the smaller, faster growing things, whether it's the crops or the chickens or the rabbits or the pigs or the sheep and goats. Do those first. Take your profit from those and put it in cattle. Because part of your financial planning, you're planning your 20 or 30% profit. Keep that profit, reinvest it in your farm, but reinvest it in the cattle. Um, unless and until bankers start to offer interest-free loans on cattle for 7 years, do not buy cattle. It just doesn't work because it takes 7 years for a cattle herd to double in size. And anything else other than that, You always have to sell your breeding stock to pay interest rates and stuff like that, and it's just not worth doing it until and unless banks start loaning for cattle 7 years interest free. And by the way, after 7 years, they can charge 20% without a problem, but they have to give the farmer time to double his herd before.
Here we
Um,
are.
and then in non-brittle environments, really think about creating a grazing plan for 80 years. Now, it's a grazing plan, that's just because the language of holistic management, but you're grazing trees. So in year one, on each acre, plant a variety of plants so that every year something can be harvested. If you're in the more tropical areas, that's things like papaya and passion fruit. But there's things all over. If you're up in the northern woods, it's mushrooms. Um, so plan for fast-growing vines, fruit trees to be harvested in year 1 to 5, then trees that are ready in 2 to 5 years, then 5 to 10, 10 to 20, and go all the way out to 80 years. And as the forest gets older, the more valuable hardwoods will be there for your great-great-grandchildren to have a tree to harvest each year per acre or per hectare. So this applies to non-brittle environments and brittle environments, this same thinking. And then remember, in the non-brittle environments, the protein sources are pigs and chickens. The real name for a pig is a forest hog, and then the real name for a chicken is a jungle fowl. Consider those under your canopies. Um, Try and plan for multiple incomes in the same of the same acre per year, at least five and preferably. So an example, that I've done with several people is sweet corn. That was income one. Then grazing the stalks, but the sweet corn was planted with about 100 different other things, so there was a lot of biodiversity. And so, so then the grazing is your next income. Then the pigs foraging and digging up the roots. That was the next income. Then the chickens coming and cleaning up the pig dung and whatever the pigs missed. That was the next income. Then the meat sales of the pork and beef and chickens. And you can keep going. Timbers, fruits, nuts. And then you can sell the view and you can hunt the wildlife and stuff like that. But then monitor. Use your biological monitoring to calculate every drop of carbon you can cycle and turn into solar dollars. Don't leave your profit on the ground. Too many farmers are nervous, Nellies, and that the holistic grazing planning allows you to plan your drought reserve. Take everything else, just turn it into money. And because I'm coming across a lot of people who self-sabotage themselves. So crop farmers calculate what they grew and then they harvested all you should too. Your combine is your herd if you're in cattle, etc., etc. And then plan, 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 and plan. Grazing plan is always part of your fin plan. So is time management plan. A lot of ranchers are not doing a time management plan. See your whole year mapped out. Have your team discuss if they have enough time to make it all happen and have quality time. And so finally, spend 5 days off the ranch, off the property, locked in a hotel conference room with your team. So you give everyone their homework 6 weeks earlier so that all the numbers are ready. But when it's time to plan, isolate yourself from your ranch. Hire other people to come and do your chores. It's a great Christmas winter ritual, so you can hit the new year running with a plan in place. How does that sound? Did I make it?
That was awesome. You are right on time, Roger. That was a lot of information in a short amount of time. We can probably start your camera here real quick. I wish we had time for Q&A. Roger, what is the best way for folks to be able to get a hold of you? And if they say, hey, I want to learn more, how do we do that?
Uh, you can share my email and my phone number. If I can take calls, I do. If I can't, I can't.
Okay. All right. So I will put that, or Margot, if you're able to put Roger's contact information in the chat, that would be wonderful. So Roger, thank you. Apologize that the internet was a little sketchy. My prayer is that in the recording it will come out a little bit better. Usually it does. But the content was amazing. And I think this sets a really great context for what we're going to be talking about in the rest of these 2 days here together. So God bless you, Rodger. Good luck on your meeting with your meetings there.
Okay, thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you
evening,
so
folks.
much. Very well. Very good.